The new United Nations Special Envoy Hans Gunderberg addresses Yemenis as he starts his mission today. Displaced people's suffering aggravates and their numbers increases as the war continues. Joint forces inflict casualties on Houthi rebels in 4 fronts in Hodeidah. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Shaza Abdelbey. The new United Nations envoy to Yemen, Hans Gunderberg, begins his mission today. The Swedish diplomat is expected to resume peace efforts after a period of political halt since Stockholm Fragile Agreement brokered by his precedor Martin Griffiths. In his first appearance, Gunderberg addressed the Yemeni people, saying that he would do everything within his power to achieve a lasting and comprehensive peace in the country.
Many of you know, over the course of the last decade, I have come to love and respect your beautiful country, and therefore these last 7 years have been particularly difficult to follow. I accept this responsibility with a full understanding of the magnitude of the task, the complexity of the situation, and the challenges that lie ahead. However, I can assure you that I will do everything in my power to contribute to achieving lasting and just peace in Yemen. My office and I will always be available to listen to your priorities and be guided by your aspirations. We will be relentless in the pursuit of peace. We will also remind all involved of their shared responsibility for Yemen's future. As the United Nations Special Envoy for Yemen, I look forward to straight, inclusive, and above all, serious interaction with Yemeni, regional, and international interlocutors. Together we can help Yemen change course towards a peaceful resolution of this conflict. Thank you.
The world awaits the new United Nations envoy, whose mandate will be to find a swift path to peace where no obvious one exists. The path is more likely to be a long, hard one that requires a renewed focus on laying the groundwork for sustainable peace. The following report looks into the potential challenges awaiting Hans Gunderberg's mission.
Houthis chose a major military escalation to welcome the new UN envoy to Yemen, Hans Gunderberg, as for the first time. They targeted the eastern regions of Saudi Arabia, which are the oil production areas, with a number of ballistic missiles and drones. They also bombed south of Marib with missiles and sent thousands of their fighters to the fronts west and north of the governorate, in a situation that reflects the extent of the difficulties facing the UN envoy in his mission that started on Sunday. The UN envoy started his first mission with a message addressed to the Yemeni people, in which he affirmed his awareness of the difficulties and complications facing his mission. But he pledged to work and reach peace, and said that he and his office would deal with the Yemeni and regional parties openly to return Yemen to the path of peace. Meanwhile, the government, which confirmed its willingness to work on the success of the mission of the UN envoy, described the Houthi escalation as an announcement from them to drop the option of a political solution, especially since it came simultaneously with the group's leader announcement that he is determined to continue war. Also, the militias continue to prove their determination to continue war came by opening recruitment centers and mobilizing students from schools and tempting them to obtain monthly salaries and high grades at the end of the academic year if they joined battlefields. Concurrently, the United Nations Office for Humanitarian Affairs in Yemen renewed the alert that the prolonged conflict, large-scale displacement, severe food insecurity, economic stagnation, the collapse of state institutions, and restricted humanitarian access, along with natural hazards and the COVID-19 pandemic, have caused extremely high levels of humanitarian and protection needs, as more than 20 million people, which is about 2/3 of the population, requires urgent humanitarian assistance. In a new statement, the office said that despite these staggering needs, the humanitarian response plan in Yemen is still only 50% funded. Crucially, as of August 31st, many sectors of the vital humanitarian response had received less than 15% of the funds required to respond to the needs of millions of vulnerable people, including internally displaced, women, children, and disabled people. The new UN envoy receives his mission with a desk full of complex files, despite hopes in the Yemeni scene that Greenberg will be the solution to end the crisis and achieve peace.
United Nations Deputy Coordinator of Humanitarian Affairs Diego Zorella visited Taz to evaluate UN mission. The UN official and his delegation met Taz officials to discuss humanitarian issues in the city and the situation of displaced people. Taz officials highlighted the humanitarian situation and the difficulties they face in this regard. They called upon international organizations for an immediate intervention in order to support local authorities in providing population with basic and adequate needs. Rights Radar, a human rights organization, commanded of the destruction of 35 houses in Rahba to the east of Ma'rib. According to this organization, the destruction caused by Houthi arbitrary shelling to these houses forced more than 145 families to move to other places. Sources said Houthi rebels conducted a series of attacks on the villages in Al-Rahba with different types of weapons, including drone attacks and rockets, in order to advance in these areas. Sources add that Houthi attacks left deaths and wounded among civilians. Most of them are women and children. To Al-Hudaydah, where a number of Houthi rebels were killed and wounded in 4 fighting fronts. Military media of the joint forces announced that the rebels directed their mortar and gun machines towards the fronts of Al-Khamsin al-Saleh, 16 kilometer, and Al-Fazza. Responding to the Houthi fires, the joint forces targeted rebels with direct fires and managed to silence the sources of Houthi rebels. 4 citizens were injured in a mine explosion west of Al-Dala. The explosion occurred in the area between Batar and Al-Mashir. After the explosion, the engineering teams of the National Center for Demining went to the village of Al-Mashir to scan and clear the area. Also in Al-Dala, Houthi rebels targeted citizens with various types of weapons, including mortars and sniper shots. The UN warned that a number of humanitarian agencies will suspend their missions in Yemen due to lack of funding. The statement is alarming, with the country experiencing a dire humanitarian situation and with millions of Yemen being on the brink of famine. More on this story is within this report.
Earlier this week, the United Nations warned that a number of its programs could halt its operation in Yemen due to lack of funding. The warning sent shockwaves inside Yemeni circles, with the Minister of Public Health saying that any suspension in the United Nations programs and other international agencies will bring about shortage in services provided to the Yemenis. He noted the government's inability to fill the gap. According to the minister, the healthcare sector will be negatively affected from this possible suspension, especially in light of the ongoing war and the spread of COVID-19 pandemic, in addition to other epidemics. David Gresley, the resident humanitarian coordinator to Yemen, warned that some agencies, starting from this current month, may reduce their programs, including in water, health, and other sectors, due to lack of funding. He noted that the situation would be catastrophic for millions of people in Yemen. Gresley urged donor countries to speed their donation to the country, outlining that the health sector has only received 11% of the funds it needs this year, while water, sanitation, and hygiene has received only 8% of the required funds. The United Nations looks for the $50 million United States dollars that are allocated to Yemen Humanitarian Fund to provide emergency life-saving assistance and protection to internally displaced people, refugees, migrants, and host communities who are most at risk due to recent clashes and displacements. The United Nations added that about 25% of this hopeful funding will be cashed to displaced families in order to allow them pay rent, staving off risk of eviction, invest in improving their livelihoods, or cover their basic needs. The coordinator reiterated that Yemen remains the world's worst humanitarian crisis, with some 20.7 million people requiring some form of humanitarian assistance and protection. Reflecting on that, Yemen is in dire need for international care. The country needs solutions, the first of which is a swift ceasefire between all warring parties. The ceasefire will lead to a convention on the necessity to moving into a more real and viable political compromise that will shape the country's future in order to secure peace and stability for people who suffer day by day with the continuation of conflict.
In Al Jawf, clashes have flared in different fronts across the city. Shahla front was subjected to a healthy escalation when rebels tried to infiltrate into the positions of the government forces. Military sources said that more than 20 elements were killed in the battles, while the rest fled. Coalition forces declared that they have intercepted a new Houthi attack directed to Saudi Arabia. The coalition said that they intercepted 3 Houthi missiles that targeted Jazdan, Najran, and the eastern side of Saudi Arabia. Earlier, the coalition said that its air defenses destroyed a Houthi drone that targeted Khamis Mashhad to the south of the kingdom. Saudi Arabia alerted the Security Council on Friday that it would take all necessary actions to protect the country and the safety of people on its soil. The strategic oil-rich city of Ma'rib in the center of Yemen is facing intense attacks from the Houthi rebels in order to control the land and wealth. The rebels, however, are confronted with bold resistance in all fronts of Ma'rib.
Fighting is flaring in Yemeni front lines between the Houthi rebels and the resistance. The Houthi rebels were inflicted with heavy losses during the past days in Ma'rib and Ad-Dali'. In the front of Ma'rib, the Iranian-backed militia was under severe blows from both land and air in the western front. A military source said that the government forces, backed by the popular resistance, fought back a wide-scale attack for the rebels in Al-Majgah and Sirwah. According to the source, fierce fighting erupted between the Houthi rebels and the government forces when the former tried to penetrate the front lines in both fronts. The fighting claimed the lives of most of the Houthi rebels. Among them, there were leaders. The other remaining Houthis managed to flee. In the same areas to the west of Ma'rib, government forces' artillery shelled Houthis' positions. The shelling destroyed equipment and caused casualties among the militia. In Sirwah too, coalition area bombardment targeted Houthi reinforcements and gatherings, causing heavy losses in equipment and lives and leaving many of the rebels wounded. A Yemeni military spokesperson said that coalition conducted 170 air raids in Ma'rib, describing that as the biggest aerial operation in the front. The Houthi rebels' retreat continued in Ad-Dali' front to the center-west of Yemen. A military source declared that the joint forces backed by the resistance blocked a Houthi attack against position in Al-Husha to the west of the governorate. The source added that Houthi Blitz attack was drove back by direct fire from the joint forces and the resistance. They forced the militia into a random withdrawal. Houthi disordered withdrawal in Ad-Dali' obliged the rebels to confront direct fires that caused heavy losses among their penetrating lines.
Coming next.
Fighting is
Stray dogs, an emerging phenomena adding more fears to Yemenis.
رسالتي على منطقة الروضة. استهدف الأطفال الأبرياء اللي يلعبوا في الشارع. بيدعي للسلام يقولوا للسلام يقتل أطفالنا، يقتل أطفالنا الأبرياء.
أنا قلت افتجعت ولا أقول معي واحد صاروخ ثاني، طلعت البيت حقنا. جالس أنا ألعب أنا وأصحابي والصاروخ الطرح.
Welcome back. The new school year has started in Shabwa with concerns and challenges that could negatively affect the teaching and learning process and the quality of education. Elementary and secondary schools lack the most basic requirements, such as books, teachers, and tools. Also, shortage of teachers in schools promoted the Department of the Education in the city to take a decision to close a number of public secondary schools. In Taiz, people went out in a protest to stand with Al-Hariq family, which was subjected to abuse and killing by elements believed to belong to the army. Protesters demanded the arrest of all the killers who participated in the crime against the family members. Also, they demanded to provide security to the family, which is still facing threats. The National Committee Against Coronavirus announced 52 new cases of the COVID-19 in 8 governorates. Committee officials said on Twitter that 30 cases were recorded in Hadramaut, 8 in Ma'rib, 4 in Aden, 4 in Al Bayda, 2 in Lahj, 2 in Shabwa, 1 in Taiz, and 1 in Al Dala. Also, 4 deaths were recorded, plus 21 recovered cases. With the current updates, the total confirmed cases are 8,101, including 1,523 deaths and 4,982 cases of recovery. Adding to the problems that face people in Yemen, stray dogs is another one. Dogs in the streets in Yemen cause fear among people, especially children, and there is a need for officials to act to end the problem. This report has more details on this issue. The phenomena of the spread of the stray dogs in a number of areas under the control of the Houthi militia has become a new threat to the lives of citizens, especially children, which results in the injury of thousands, as well as the increasing numbers of deaths. 50 Yemenis died of rabies after being attacked by stray dogs in their areas of control since the beginning of 2019 until the beginning of this year, according to government statistics. Stray dogs spread in the streets and neighborhoods of the capital Sana'a, which caused terror and fear among society as a whole, especially women and children. A significant increase was observed in the spread of dogs in front of garbage cans and next to cars, parked in front of homes amid the absence of the local authority and the security of residential neighborhoods from this deadly danger. Many children were subjected to a virus attack by these stray dogs, with increasing fears that some dogs carry serious diseases and some of them led to death, which was confirmed by some doctors as a result of rabies, which leads to death in the absence of the control vaccine. Doctors have warned of the health risks for stray dogs that plague society and citizens, especially in the past 5 years, due to diseases that dogs carry from diseases that are transmitted to humans through biting, which poses a threat to human life, including brucellosis, repeated abortions, and many parasites such as alveoli. They pointed out that the spread of dogs in the streets makes citizens vulnerable to the most dangerous and most diseases transmitted by dogs, which is rabies and leads to death. Here's a reminder of the main headlines. The new United Nations Special Envoy Hans Grunberg addresses Yemenis as he starts his mission today. Displaced people suffering aggravates and their numbers increases as the war continues. Joint forces inflict casualties on Houthi rebels in 4 fronts in Hodeidah. This is the end of the news. Thank you for watching.